As I mentioned in the opening, a bunch of big games. Hunter, we're down to the final weekend of what I guess we can call the regular season, even though there's conference championships to be played. So a bunch of good games to get to, including West Virginia's. For all the inside scoop, let's go to the phones. Welcome in our good friend Todd Fuhrman, sportsline.com. Todd, welcome back to the program.
How are you boys doing?
We're well. You have a good Thanksgiving?
Yeah, holiday was good. A little family time, some football. Didn't quite go as I would have drawn up, but nature of the business, got to get right back on the horse.
All right, so let's do it. Let's get back on the horse. Let's pick some winners for tomorrow. Let's start with the SEC Championship, Alabama, Florida. And I'm gonna guess here. I've talked to you for a couple weeks. I'm going to guess you like the under here.
Actually, I'm leaning the other way. With a total of 39.5 in the Georgia Dome, it's awfully low on one of the faster tracks where we see college football. With very little wiggle room on that particular price, a defensive score, special teams, with both of these teams not averse to doing, could change the dynamic. Wanted to make a case to back Florida here because I definitely didn't consider laying the heavy lumber with Alabama, but very difficult given the Gators' offensive struggles. I think at the same time they're going to find a way to at least get to 10, 14 points. Not really sure how this one plays out. Alabama will win. I'm just not sure who covers, boys.
Yes, Iowa has had a great season, but there's still a lot of doubters after 12 games. Tomorrow in the Big 12 Championship, they face Michigan State. The Spartans, a 3.5-point favorite. How do you see that?
Yeah, two teams that I'll openly admit I have not had in my top 10 or even top 15 for large stretches of the season. Iowa continues to go out there and win football games despite not winning the stat sheet, as we saw in Lincoln last Friday. Michigan State on the other side playing their best football of the season, but you haven't seen sharp bettors really buy into them. Iowa is going to be the side of the professionals here despite the move from 3 to 3.5. That's largely public money influencing the market right now with about 7 out of every 10 tickets coming in on Sparty. I actually agree with the general public here. I want to see Iowa go out there and prove it to me again, but it does come with the caveat, again, not personally invested myself.
Stanford, USC out west. These teams met earlier this season, a 41-31 win for Stanford. How's this one break down?
I think this is an opportunity to identify a live dog that has an outstanding opportunity to win the game outright. You look at Stanford, obviously a lot of speculation. If they win and get some help, can they be in the college football playoff discussion? I think that could provide added pressure to the Cardinal. USC, on the other hand, all you have to worry about is if they're too big, fat, and happy from winning the South and finally getting that UCLA monkey off their back. I think SC wants to get revenge for the game earlier this season. You look at the way they've adjusted their style with a little bit more of a power run game. I think USC definitely compelling, catching 4 when you consider they were 10-point chalk in the earlier meeting, one that they dropped to the Cardinal by double digits.
ACC championship game, Clemson has a ton to lose if they fall to North Carolina. Tigers 4.5-point favorites. Can they fall?
You're seeing money coming on North Carolina supporting the Tar Heels as being very live here. You look at UNC's overall body of work, still hard to find one of those season-defining victories. This would clearly be it. I'm not sure even if they do beat Clemson, unless it's by north of 3 scores, they're going to lay claim to that 4th spot in the college football postseason. But Clemson hasn't exactly been a juggernaut from an against-the-spread perspective. Failed to cover every single game in the month of November. The last time they got on the win column for their backers was on a Halloween against NC State. I just get the feeling Clemson has been going through the motions. The real question here, can they flip the switch and do enough? It's which one of these defenses will be able to get a stop, since the offenses can match one another score for score.
Air Force, San Diego State. And San Diego State's been a covering machine, haven't they, this year?
They've been an absolute juggernaut in that particular column, getting to the window in every single one of their Mountain West games, aside from the push against Nevada, Reno. Their loss against Penn State kind of defined their season. They got back on track. But again, they've had a softer draw within the Mountain West. They'll be starting this game with a new quarterback as Maxwell Smith, their guy most of the year, had a torn ACL midway through their regular season finale. Air Force, on the other side, they've struggled with San Diego State in the past, but I think their multidimensional offense, a passing attack, able to keep the Aztecs defense honest. 6.5 feels like a big number in a game that'll be lower scoring. I think Air Force takes this one down to the wire.
Game that's certainly of particular interest here in West Virginia. The Mountaineers go to Manhattan, Kansas, face Kansas State. Wildcats sort of making a little late run. West Virginia started the week, I believe, as a 7-point favorite. That number is down to 5.5. Money starting to go in on K-State.
There is some money. A lot of folks playing the emotional angle there with Kansas State, thinking that Bill Snyder will pull off a Frank Beamer and get his team to the postseason. You look at Kansas State, this is a team clearly that struggles to get off the field defensively, especially in their red zone. And from top to bottom, I think West Virginia, a much better football team, The problem being is that the way to attack Kansas State has largely been through the air, and West Virginia has chosen to do most of their damage on the ground. You've also seen a big move on the under, 60 down to 56.5. Can kind of see it, can kind of see the move to the dog, but honestly, guys, I know it's not what Mountaineer fans want to hear. Not a real compelling gambling angle from a side or total to try and get involved with.
Let's go one NFL game before we let you run. Colts at Steelers, the Sunday night game.
I think Pittsburgh knows how important this game is, but in a little bit of a delicate travel spot, having to go across the country, exerting a ton of effort to come up short in the Pacific Northwest. But there's a reason the books have hung a stronger number here at 7 than using a 6 or 6.5. I'm not buying the Colts, especially outdoors with potential elements playing a role. I like Pittsburgh here to win and do so comfortably. I think they make a lot of sense if you want to use them as a teaser leg for those folks so inclined.
Okay, final thing, and then I promise I'll let you run. You tweeted something earlier. I went ahead and sent it on because I found it very interesting. You put your projection models out there, your kind of power rankings. You think one of the teams vying for a college football playoff spot is vastly overrated, but interestingly, it's not Iowa, which most people would think. You think it is?
It is Clemson as far as some of the math is concerned, and that explains a lot of the reason you've seen bettors coming in against them this week. If the Tigers win, they're obviously into the Final Four, but I think they are the most susceptible of teams that people really believe have earned their way in. Whether it's the Big Ten winner, Alabama or Oklahoma, who they'll probably encounter, I think you'll have plenty of value going against the Tigers in that semifinal matchup on New Year's Eve.
When you look at that, if Carolina pulls the upset on Clemson and Stanford wins, do you think it's Stanford then that jumps into that final spot?
I think the committee's really backed themselves in a corner, putting Ohio State 6, but Stanford 7. I think Stanford, by virtue of winning a conference championship, will get the free pass into the playoff, much like Ohio State did last year, jumping some other teams. But hard to argue with either of those teams, given Stanford's on-field resume is better than Ohio State, but you can't argue with the Buckeyes' track record when it comes to travel and having the defending national champion back in the mix.
Boy, you can't. But, Todd, you talk about some messes on their hands because you're right. They've promoted this conference championship matters. If Stanford goes down and UNC wins and Ohio State slips in there without having even played in their conference championship game, it is going to get loud.
I really think, guys, and I don't know if a lot of people have factored this into the equation, I think if Michigan State beats Iowa, it makes Ohio State's resume that much better, whereas if Iowa beats Michigan State, giving the Spartans a third loss, that actually would serve as a huge help towards a 10-2 Stanford team.